Hi, welcome to Chard Review. After thousands of years of incubation, ancient creatures invade Earth and arouse the wrath of Godzilla, who is willing to do whatever it takes to protect his throne. Today we will recap the story of the movie Godzilla from 2014. The year is 1999, and Dr. Ishiro Serizawa travels to the Philippines with his assistant Vivian Graham to investigate a possible radiation source. Guided by Jerry, the scientists enter the cave and find a gigantic fossil that had been there for millions of years. While exploring the place, Vivian finds something similar to two eggs and realizes that one of them is broken, which raises suspicions that something came out of it in Japan. Joe Brody receives a call from Takashi and tells him that the tremors that were occurring in the Philippines have already reached that. 80 The man is an engineer at a nuclear power plant and is concerned that these tremors could cause damage to the structure. Sandra, his wife, also works at the mill, and after their son goes to school, the couple goes to work. When they arrive on the scene, Joe asks Sandra to assemble a team and go investigate the seismic tremors. Meanwhile, the engineer tries to find out the origin of the tremors, as he believes that this is no ordinary earthquake. Suddenly, a strong seismic tremor compromises the structure of the facility, and Joe orders all activities to be shut down. He quickly calls his wife and asks her to get out of there immediately. At that moment, a radiation smoke is released and the whole team has to run before they are hit. When he realizes that Sandra's life is in danger, Joe rushes to find her and asks Takashi to activate the hand controls so that he can lock the door as soon as his wife leaves. However, the woman claims that she will not be able to reach the end of the corridor in time and asks her husband to lock the door, otherwise the entire city will be exposed to radiation. Seeing the cloud approaching, Joe closes the door and then sees Sandra and her team. On the other side, before leaving, Sandra asks her husband to look after Ford and the man promises that he will protect his son. Minutes later, the entire facility begins to fall apart and Ford begins to worry about his parents. 15 years have passed since the day of the accident and Ford is now a bomb expert in the U.S. Navy. He has just returned from a mission and has been away from his family for 14 months. He now lives in San Francisco with his wife and 5-year-old son. After putting Sam to bed, Ford goes to spend some time with his wife, but soon the couple is interrupted by a phone call. Elle gets up to answer the phone and finds that her father-in-law has just been arrested in Japan for trespassing in a quarantine area. Furious, Ford packs his things to go find his father. Elle then says goodbye to her husband once again and Ford travels to Tokyo after being released from the police station. Joe takes his son to the apartment where he currently lives, and Ford is impressed by the amount of research his father has developed in recent years. The boy asks why his father broke into a quarantined area, and Joe reveals that he was trying to get to his old home. His plan is to prove that what happened at the power plant 15 years ago was not a natural disaster, but a tremor caused by some creature whose existence the government is trying to hide. Joe still blames himself for the death of his wife and feels the need to know the truth. The next morning when he wakes up, Ford finds his father getting ready to leave and discovers that he plans to break into the quarantine area once again. After several years of research, the engineer suspects that the tremor was caused by a giant animal that was emitting echolocation waves. Joe is convinced that this creature is still living in the old power plant and is determined to go there. Find out the truth. Ford knows that he will not be able to dissuade his father from this idea, so he decides to go with him. The two of them wear suits to protect themselves, but when Joe measures the level of radiation in that place, he realizes that the air is pure and presents no danger. After removing the mask, he is able to prove his theory and wonders why the government lied to the population. A few minutes later, father and son arrived at the house where they lived and Joe finds the records of his old research. The man also finds a picture of his family and is moved when he looks at his wife. Case for the first time after so long as they were about to leave the place, they are caught by military personnel who capture them and take the duo straight to the base. Who is in charge of that research is Dr. Serizawa, who upon hearing about Joe's arrival, goes to talk to his assistant and Vivian tells him that several diskettes with records of what happened 15 years ago were found in the engineer's backpack. At this instant, the creature, which they have named Muno, begins to release electromagnetic pulses that affect the power grid and cause power outages. The animal had been feeding on radiation for several years and grows stronger and stronger. The security team then orders everyone to clear the perimeter as the monster could attack at any moment. Ford is trapped in a van and is left behind with no way to escape to safety. Afraid of the damage that creature could cause, Serizawa orders his men to eliminate it and Muto is electrocuted. Everyone believed he was dead until a beast emerges from within that spore and a strong electromagnetic pulse knocks out all the electrical power in the facility. At that moment, the door to the room where Joe was being held opens and he takes the opportunity to escape. During his escape, the man runs into Muto, which pulls the power cables and causes several metal beams to fall. The vehicle forward is in his hit, but the boy manages to escape unharmed. However, the bridge where Joe was standing ends up being knocked down and he falls among the rubble. The monster then emerges from the depths and uses its wings to transport itself far away. Hours later, a medical team arrives on the scene to render aid to the injured, and Joe is one of them. Ford accompanies his father to the hospital and receives some advice before passing out. Joe asks the boy to go home and protect his family. Later, Joe ends up dying and Ford is summoned to Dr. Serizawa's office to help his team contain the threat. After offering condolences for the boy's loss, the scientist tells that in 1954, when a nuclear submarine first reached the depths, a creature was awakened from its slumber, Godzilla, as an alpha predator that is on Earth millions of years before humans existed. At the time he was born, the planet was 10 times more radioactive and these ancestral beings fed on the radiation. However, as the ages passed, the radiation present on the surface decreased dramatically and the creatures adapted to live on the ocean floor close to the underground in order to absorb radiation from the planets. Core Series always says that 15 years ago his team found the fossil of another giant animal in the Philippines, but the creature had been wiped out thousands of years ago by parasitic force. One of them gave birth to the monster that caused Joe's death, and Vivian asks Ford if his father has shared with him any information about what happened the day his mother died. After pondering for a few seconds, the boy remembers his father saying something about echolocation, and upon hearing this, Dr. Serizawa soon suspects that the creature was trying to communicate with another individual of his species. After making his contribution, Ford is sent by helicopter to Hawaii, where he must take a direct flight to San Francisco. Arriving in Honolulu, the boy takes a train to get to the airport and is confronted with a small boy being separated from his parents when the automatic doors close. Since he can't open them, the sailor tries to reassure the parents and promises that he will take the boy back to them. By tracking the radiation signal emitted by the creature, the scientists discovered that the bat is approaching Hawaii and send agents there to contain it. It doesn't take long before they find Muto feeding, and soon the sensors pick up something else approaching the island from the ocean. Series always suspects that Godzilla is on the way, and new military personnel are sent to keep watch on the beach. As the soldiers prepare to attack the giant bat, they are surprised by an electromagnetic wave that causes the aircraft to stop working and explode upon colliding with the ground. All power within a radius of several miles is cut off in the train. Ford is on stops running. People on the beach are surprised by an emergency alert and need to leave immediately, looking out to sea. Serizawa can hardly believe it when she sees the king of the monsters approaching. When Godzilla comes out of the ocean, he causes a tsunami that overwhelms the city. The tourists try to escape but end up being swept away by the water. People on the highest floors of the buildings are not affected, but the city's entire electrical power supply is compromised. Suddenly, Godzilla. Years in the military begin shooting in an attempt to stop the creature. However, their shots do not cause any damage to the animal. When the electricity is restored, the train starts running again and the passengers despair at the sight of the prehistoric parasite walking towards them. Military aircraft show up to shoot down the creature, but this does not stop the train from being hit, causing the elimination of many people. The creature then attacks a helicopter and when it collides with the airport runway, causes a huge explosion. The giant bat has proved invincible to humans. But Godzilla arrives to confront him and maintain the balance of nature as that creature challenges his sovereignty as king of the monsters. After the attack, Honolulu is devastated and medical teams are sent to treat the wounded. Ford walks through the crowd with the little boy on his lap and asks a social worker to help him find his parents. While Ford is filling out a form, the boy walks away without him noticing. However, when the man goes after him, he realizes that the young man has been reunited with his parents and feels the relief of having fulfilled his promise. Now his mission is to return home. However, since the airports are closed, Ford must ask the military for a ride and discovers that the monsters are also on their way to San Francisco. As Godzilla is heading towards the city, Dr. Sarazawa believes that Muto is also there since he is being hunted by the king of the monsters. However, Vivian reveals that the signal emitted by the giant bat indicated a call and asks why the creature wanted to call a predator in this instant. Sarazawa understands that the signal was not for Godzilla but for another parasite, since 2 spores were found in the Philippines 15 years ago. As far as scientists know, the second spore was inert and was sent to the United States nuclear waste dump. However, when the military goes to check if he is still there, they discover a large hole in the cell which indicates that a gigantic creature has managed to escape. The monster quickly arrives in town and wreaks havoc wherever it goes. When Vivian sees the images, she realizes that this parasite is much bigger than the other one and has no wings. Upon hearing this, Sarazawa suggests that that is a female and what attracted Godzilla. As the mating call directed at her, the couple of Mutos are now looking for radiation so that they can breed. The plan then is to assemble a nuclear warhead and put it on a boat to explode far from shore. This way the radiation will attract the parasites and Godzilla will go after them. In this way, the monsters can face each other without endangering the lives of the citizens of San Francisco. Upon arriving in Lone Pine, California, Ford discovers that another monster is on the loose. As a sailor and explosives expert, he insists that the sergeant let him help assemble the nuclear warheads. Elle is a nurse in the hospital when she receives a call from her husband. She is very relieved to hear Ford's voice because since her husband went to Japan, she has not been able to speak to him. Ford then states that he will arrive at the hospital the next morning and promises that he will get his family out of the war zone. At this very moment, thousands of people are trying to leave San Francisco but end up stuck in traffic that night. Ford and other military personnel are transporting the nuclear warheads on a train when they spot a war going on a few miles away. Therefore, the group decides to take a break and contact other military personnel in an attempt to find out if the way to the coast is clear. However, while trying to contact them, the officer hears several screams and suddenly a terrifying roar approaches. The men then split into 2 teams to investigate the site. Ford and Morales are surprised by the female's arrival, but manage to hide before being attacked by her. The pair breathed a sigh of relief, believing themselves to be safe, but are soon surprised by the arrival of a burning train while running. Morales ends up being eliminated by the monster, but Ford manages to survive by jumping into the water and spots the creature feeding on the nuclear warheads. By morning, Ford is still alive. He managed to swim to shore and was the only one of his team to survive the attack. Some military personnel show up to retrieve the only bomb that has not been devoured and find Ford wandering around the site. Meanwhile, Elle sees her patients and co-workers leaving town, but decides to continue waiting for her husband. Fearing for her son's life, the woman gives Sam to her friend Laura and promises that she will. And the boy? As soon as his father arrives, Ford has just been rescued and goes to Oakland to finish the mission. There is a traffic jam on the Golden Gate Bridge and Sam is inside one of the vehicles. Everyone is apprehensive when they spot hundreds of birds flying away from the ocean and soon realized that some threat is approaching. Just then, the officers prepare for Godzilla's arrival and the shooting begins. Afraid that his bus will be hit, the driver steps on the gas and manages to overtake the vehicles in front of him. During the escape, the children screamed desperately as they watched Godzilla being attacked. Furious, the giant lizard breaks the bridge in half and continues on his way to the beach. Meanwhile, another group of military personnel turns on the stopwatch and a countdown begins marking 1.5 hours until the bomb explodes. At that instant, an electromagnetic pulse is released and the engines of all the war vehicles are switched off. As a result, aircraft begin to fall out of the sky and the pilots are unable to get the boat. With the nuclear warhead away from the coast, the situation worsens when Muto appears, dives into the water, and then invades the city. After getting food, he flies towards the female of his species who is about to give birth to her first litter. Now the army has a new problem on its hands, because an analog timer has been installed on the nuclear warhead that Muto picked up and it is not possible to deactivate it remotely. If the explosion occurs, not only the parasites will be destroyed, but also the 150,000 people who still remain in the city. Therefore, they plan a way to break into the creature's nest and find the bomb in less than 1 hour so that Ford can disarm it. However, if the timer cannot be stopped, Plan B is to get the bomb to the pier and send it as far away from San Francisco as possible before it explodes. While the soldiers try to prevent the entire city from being destroyed, Muto and Godzilla meet. At this time, L and the other people who were in the war zone hide in the subway. The skydivers jump onto the spot where they believe the female has built her nest and are faced with a duel between the titans. The group follows the signal emitted by the warhead and spots the creature laying its eggs in a deep hole underground after laying eggs. The female is attacked by Godzilla and the soldiers take the opportunity to look for the bomb. Upon entering the nest, Ford is dismayed to see thousands of spores ready to release new monsters into that world. Finally, the soldiers find the warhead and there are only 27 minutes until the explosion. The men try to open the control panel so Ford can disarm it, but the doors are sealed. Therefore, the only option is to take the bomb to the boat and send it away from the city. As the soldiers carry the warhead out of the nest, the giant lizard is about to eliminate one of the parasites. But Muto appears to defend the female. The two creatures then team up to attack the enemy and destroy numerous buildings during the battle. Before he leaves, Ford manages to cause an explosion that completely destroys that nest. Realizing that her offspring have been eliminated, the female is distraught and in a moment of distraction, is struck by Godzilla's atomic ray. At that moment, Ford takes the opportunity to escape and the officers manage to get the bomb to the boat. When he realizes that his food has been stolen, the parasite goes after the thieves and Muto continues to confront the lizard, but ends up dying when crushed by the enemy's tail. During the attack, a gigantic building is brought down and Godzilla ends up buried beneath the rubble despite his leg injury. Ford walks toward the pier and sees his colleagues being eliminated by the parasite. The man then runs to the boat where the warhead is and realizes that there are only 13 minutes left before the explosion, so he sets off in the hope that he can steer the ship away. However, his plans are threatened when the monster approaches his boat and is about to tear it to pieces at this moment. Something unexpected happens and Ford is saved by Godzilla, who attacks his enemy with a bite and then shoots his atomic beam into the animal's mouth. When the creature is destroyed, the town's electrical power returns and the boat's engines start running again. However, Agent Ford is too weak to make it back to the dock and decides to accept his death, knowing that he was responsible for saving thousands of lives. Minutes later, Ford is surprised by a bright light from a rescue helicopter. The sailor is rushed off the boat and manages to survive the explosion the next morning. 1604. Godzilla is found in the middle of the city and is unconscious. Everyone believes the giant of the seas is dead, but they realized they were wrong when the creature starts breathing again. The firemen try to save as many people as possible who are lost in the rubble, and Ford walks through the city with his son on his lap looking for his wife. The man was already beginning to lose hope that Elle might be alive, but is surprised when he sees the woman leaving the shelter after hugging her son. Elle kisses her husband and feels relieved to have her whole family together again. On this day, everyone stops to watch the king of the monsters return to the sea after eliminating his competitors to the throne and saving the city. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below, and if you like the video, please like and subscribe for more movie review. See you next time.